There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
No question. I mean, no question. It's that simple.
Well, that's just one of a number of things. One is that she wants to ban fracking, and that's going to drive up energy costs for all Americans. When she was running back then, she said she wanted to eliminate private health insurance for Americans. Right. But she wants to give free health care to illegal immigrants. She went and actually worked to bail out criminals in the United States, but makes it easier for illegal immigrant criminals to stay here. So she's had all these policies, and it's cumulative damage that she's done to this country. Prices up 20%, 10 million illegal immigrants into this country, including members of criminal cartels, drug dealers, people on the terrorist watch list. That's why we need to get Donald Trump and J.D. Vance into the White House and a full Republican Senate and House to help them get the country together and back on track.
Here's J.D. Vance was on Fox this morning, and here's his take on what he saw last night with her interview. Roll that.
I felt a little bad for her because it was clear that she wasn't totally sure-footed, and she didn't totally know why she was saying the things that she was saying. She's been coached to pretend to be a moderate. Unfortunately, guys, she's governed as a San Francisco liberal, and because of it, Americans are poorer, the world is more chaotic, and our border is wide open.
I mean, specifically on fracking, clearly the reason that she's willing to actually distort what she said or make up stuff that she said in the 2020 debate is because she wants Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania does very well with fracking. The people like fracking. Even the Democratic senator likes fracking. But the point is her past has been definitively against fracking. I mean, it's just clearly a political move, right?
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this pretty entertaining interview that was heated only on one side, okay? As CNN anchor Kate Bolduan slowly gets angry on the inside as Vivek Ramaswamy schools her on the differences between President Trump's policies and Kamala Harris's policies, okay? Because the mainstream liberal media is trying to create this false equivalence, like they always do, okay, between Trump and Kamala Harris when it comes to issues that Kamala Harris is struggling with. Like, for example, Tim Walz and his stolen valor accusations, because the liberal media can't shake off these allegations. The fact is that the military community, the veteran community, they're very upset with Tim Walz over him lying about his military service. They try to create some false equivalent controversy on the Trump side to try to take away from what is happening to Tim Walz, okay? And that's the whole point of the Arlington Cemetery controversy. That's not really a controversy, that the mainstream liberal media, they've gotten so desperate to try to take the attention away from Tim Walz that they're attacking Gold Star families, right? That is what is happening, okay? And you have Kamala Harris also being criticized for flip-flopping, shifting her policies, okay? Going from extreme far left to moderate on some issues like healthcare and fracking, okay? So what the liberal media is trying to do is that they're trying to create some false equivalence by claiming that Trump is flip-flopping on policies, even though he isn't, right? At least not in an extreme way like Kamala Harris is doing. And Kamala Harris is not giving valid explanations for why she's flip-flopping on her policy. Because ultimately, she's not just flip-flopping, she's lying, okay? She is lying. This is why she doesn't have a clear explanation for her flip-flopping, because it's not just a flip-flop. She's just flat-out lying about her positions, the same way that she's lying about her life, right? She's lying about her identity. She's lied about so many other things. There's not one thing that this woman won't lie about. And again, I think that her policy positions kind of speak to that, in her changing of positions, despite her claiming that, hey, my values haven't changed. Well, it's because she's lying, right? That's what she's telling you out loud. I'm lying, okay? I'm just trying to get your vote, okay? And that I am the same radical left-wing communist lunatic that I was back in 2019, right? So I want to react to Vivek Ramaswamy schooling this CNN anchor as she gets angry, visibly upset. You guys are going to see her face because she knows that she can't really play this game with Vivek. He's too smart for her propaganda. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yes, right now is former Republican presidential candidate and Trump campaign surrogate Vivek Ramaswamy. Thank you so much for coming, and it's good to see you. So the campaign memo also makes clear that part of the strategy right now is to continue to try to define Kamala Harris as extreme and radical. If you take a look inside this new polling from CNN of likely voters in these battleground states, though, what likely voters are saying is that is not yet working. Showing the way we see it, the way the numbers show it is showing voters largely describe Harris's views and policies as mainstream and Trump's as too extreme across these states. About half in each state saying Trump's views and policies are so extreme they pose a threat to the country, while around 4 in 10 say the same about Harris's position. A lot of numbers, but the point being is if voters don't agree with the extreme narrative against Trump, do you think Team Trump should be shifting now against Harris? Sorry.
I actually disagree. I respectfully disagree with your characterization there in one important way, which is that voters have not yet been exposed, principally via the media, to what Kamala Harris's past positions actually are. I don't blame the voters. They've been served up a new version of Kamala Harris where she is running to the center on economic and social policies. But the reality is, if we're able to use Kamala Harris's own words against her, as I believe we should, she ran for president favoring an tax on unrealized capital gains, favoring an abolition, her words, to abolish private health insurance, a ban on fracking, bans on offshore drilling. These are the kinds of policies that absolutely are not mainstream for most Americans. And this is where I do think the debate will be useful. I do think that greater media scrutiny of Kamala Harris, hopefully with more sit-down interviews than we've had so far, will be helpful. Say what you will, you may or may not agree with Donald Trump. He and J.D. Vance have sat for tens of interviews, as have other members of the campaign and surrogate team. The reality is we haven't seen the same from Kamala Harris. I do expect that's going to change in the next couple of months, and I believe voters are going to be very well informed heading into November.
Yeah, so I want to add further to that, right? First and foremost, notice how Vivek Ramaswamy says Kamala's name, right? He says Kamala, right? Kamala. And it's so natural for him, okay? Because he's Indian and Kamala's name is Indian, right? It's just so funny because all of these so-called pro-blacks, okay, that swear up and down that Kamala Harris is black, they can't even pronounce her name right? And they boohoo, whine, and cry racism over people purposely mispronouncing her name, but they don't even pronounce her name right because her name is Indian, right? She has an Indian name. Vivek is like the only person I've heard consistently pronounce her name correctly, right? I think it's, again, Kamala, right? Kamala, right? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I don't give a damn, okay? But anyways, I will add to Vivek's argument here. It's not just that voters haven't got exposed to Kamala Harris and her extreme policies, because he's right about that. The mainstream media, they're not talking enough about how extreme it is to tax unrealized capital gains, right? Or how extreme price controls are, okay? But the reality is that you also have people who unfortunately don't believe that price controls are extreme. They don't believe that abolishing private health insurance is extreme, right? That's an unfortunate reality of our politics that I think that as conservatives, we have to accept that there are just a significant amount of people in this country, maybe 20, 30% or so, that are just stupid, right? That are just dumb. Like they literally will listen to somebody say, yeah. We need to stop the corporate greed. We need to stop the price gouging, and we need price controls, right? They will listen to that and say, oh yeah, that sounds right, okay? Only allowing stores to charge $1 for a loaf of bread, that sounds about right, okay? That sounds like great policy. They don't understand that the policy in and of itself is bad, okay? It might sound good, but it's bad. And the unfortunate reality is that some people just have to experience it. They don't believe that fire burns until they actually touch fire, okay? We've seen this happen across the country in these liberal cities when it comes to things like illegal immigration. Now, all of a sudden, people realize, oh, wait, letting illegals into this country unvetted the way that Biden and Kamala is doing right now, that's not a good idea, right? That has negative consequences, right? They're learning that these soft on crime policies have negative consequences. But the only way for them to learn this stuff is for them to experience it. They can't just use their common sense, okay? They're not being taught these things in school. So a lot of these people really do not understand that these policies that sound so great are not good. Yeah, it sounds great to have the government pay for everybody's health care until you realize that, hey, this is unaffordable because we have a country that is too sickly for universal health care, right? We're too obese. We're too fat. We're walking around with too many diseases, okay? It costs too much for us to have universal health care. You're going to realize that, hey, wait, now you have to wait in line to get surgeries and operations that you may need. Well, why is that? It's because there's no incentive for people to be healthy anymore, right? You just have the government pay for all of your sick problems, right? And hey, you may or may not get surgery. You may or may not get the medication you need. You also will stifle innovation as well, too, because the profit motive is gone. There are a lot of negative externalities with universal health care that these people don't really understand, but that will require you to actually study it, right? To understand that, hey, there's a reason why you have royals from Saudi Arabia and medical tourists. They come over to the United States when they really need to get their health care, right? When they really need some type of surgical procedure or some serious operation, right? Or they get some crazy disease, they come to the United States. They don't stay in their countries with socialized medicine. Well, the reason why is because their countries with socialized medicine, they're benefiting from the innovation that happened in the United States, what we created, okay? And we created it because our system is not socialized, at least not completely socialized. I mean, we got Medicare, Medicaid, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that people, again, they don't understand. It's just much easier for you to say, well, the government should just pay for all of it, right? And people think, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. That's a great thing. But that is ignorance, okay? And progressivism, progressive ideology thrives in ignorance. This is why the Democrat Party, their main platform is ignorance, right? They take advantage. They prey on people's ignorance, right? So that's what people got to understand.
Vivek, but on banning private health insurance, she has said she does not believe that, and she does not believe that now. On banning fracking, she has made clear, and she did in the interview with Dana Bash, that she does not support that anymore. If evolving, or call it what you want, flip-flopping, you can call it what you want. But one second.
I can't leave that hanging. Kate, I can't leave that hanging on policy, if I may.
I understand, but I'm going to ask the question, then you can totally answer. She said very clearly that now is those are not her positions. If evolving on an issue, if evolving on a position, you can even call it flip-flopping on an issue. If that is now not allowed, if that should be, the death knell to a campaign, Donald Trump's got issues there.
Wow.
So look, the reality is Donald Trump's been clear about his policy positions. With Kamala Harris, I want to be specific about this, though. Actions speak louder than words. When let's you brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for Americans. The reality is, when you think about the Green New Deal, she was the chief proponent, not just as a co-sponsor of the legislation, but going further and saying she would end the filibuster in the Senate to ram that through. So the reality is she can say what she wants to say now. Those are actions she has taken. Is someone allowed to evolve? Of course they are, but she deserves to explain exactly why she's changed those positions, exactly what her position is. If it's not a ban on fracking, what exactly is it? What exactly is her healthcare plan if she no longer favors abolishing private health insurance, which just 4 short years ago when she ran for president, she did? And that's the kind of scrutiny that's been missing. I think Donald Trump has received plenty of scrutiny, and I give credit to him for sitting for hostile interviews that Kamala Harris has not. But the American people and the American electorate deserve a rich policy debate that they have not had.
And it gets to be, I guess it will be for the voters to decide how long of kind of an expiration date there is on when something is still your position, or if you believe them now on what they're saying on their position. Voters get to decide. She said that her position has evolved on that. Is it okay for candidates to evolve on a position over a period of years?
I think it's perfectly acceptable. I think most people need to rethink their positions over time as facts change. But they deserve to explain to the people clearly what she has failed to do. And it's not just a change in position. These are hard positions on which she has actually taken policy action, both as a vice president, an attorney general, and a U.S. senator. And simply saying she doesn't believe that anymore is not a sufficient explanation on core issues that affect costs for Americans, health care for Americans, taxation for Americans, including taxes on unrealized gains, on which she has not yet changed her position. That, I think, is a devastating economic policy that's among those she needs to explain.
On positions that candidates seem to be struggling on. Donald Trump continues to be struggling on stating a clear position on abortion and reproductive rights.
Okay, so before she gets into this, because of course this is what they got to do, right? They can't have one interview where they sit down and they talk about Kamala Harris in a negative way, right? Which, by the way, this woman's defending Kamala Harris. Why does Kamala Harris have to do interviews when you have people like this, right? She's out here answering questions that Kamala should be answering. Well, Kamala's changed her positions on these things. Really? Has she? Because the only indication that we've gotten that she's changed her positions is from some, anonymous sources within her campaign. Maybe she put out an email or something like that. But that's not an interview. She has not sat down in an interview and thoroughly explained how in the hell did you go from supporting banning all private health insurance to now all of a sudden you don't want to do that. You have to explain that in detail. She hasn't done that. It's not enough just to say, oh, well, I just changed my position. I don't believe that anymore. Okay, but why don't you believe it anymore? Right? Because that is an extreme position. She co-sponsored the Medicare for All bill, right? So not only is it something that she supports, but she led the way on it, okay? So it's not enough just to say, oh, well, I just don't believe that anymore. You got to tell us why. But instead of just conceding that point, right, and just accepting the fact that, yeah, Kamala Harris hasn't done a good job of explaining her positions, that the media hasn't done a good job of holding her accountable for explaining her positions, is always this what about Trump thing. They always try to create some false equivalence. It seemed like Trump is just as bad as Kamala Harris on whatever Kamala Harris is being criticized for. It's just not true, right? It's not true. And Vivek is basically going to drive home that point in the rest of this interview. And you can see how visibly upset this woman gets because Vivek is not allowing her to create this false equivalence without pushing back, right? This is what these people do. Every time a Republican answers a question, right? After they answer the question, first thing they do is that they throw their little opinion in there, right? Their little fact check, okay? And Vivek is not letting her get away with that. No, you're not going to try to talk after me and then move on to another question, okay? And not allow me to rebut you trying to fact check me or to correct me. No, we're not going to do that. Right? I'm not going to allow you to do that. I'm going to go into more detail about her flip-flopping. I'm going to go harder, and that's what Vivek is doing here. That's why she, again, clearly is visibly upset by this, right?
Last week, he was asked his position on a Florida ballot initiative he will be voting on to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. And the way he responded to the question was 6 weeks is too short. I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. The next day, he said that he will then, though, support the 6-week ban. Why is he struggling to state a clear position on abortion then?
So again, I respectfully disagree with your characterization there about him struggling to state a position. The truth of the matter is Donald Trump has been crystal clear that, first of all, this is an issue for the states.
And that is an issue that he's going to be voting on in the state of Florida, right?
Well, first of all, in his capacity for running for U.S. president, what he's running for Kamala Harris against, he has been clear that he is against a federal ban on abortion. Now, on the Florida bill, which I want to address as well, there is a difference between being opposed to a 6-week ban, which he's been consistent on, both during the campaign when I ran against him, as well as throughout, that he's against a 6-week ban. That is different than what this ballot measure accomplishes. And I know you know that, Kate. This ballot measure, through its vague crafting, would allow abortions far after 6 weeks, arguably under the interpretation of some legal scholars, all the way up to the point of birth. He's against that, and that's been a consistent position as well. So I do think this attempt by Democrats and its politics, so you'd expect it, to conflate an opposition to a 6-week ban with somehow being in favor of a ballot measure that actually would allow for far more than that, is, I think, sophistry. And the job of voters, I hope they do it, is to see through that, even if it's served up to them in the media. You can't conflate those two things, and I don't think that's an inconsistency, with all due respect.
Things you also can't conflate is on the issue of, and I've heard this time and again, of accusing, of saying that Democrats and putting this on Kamala Harris is, saying that they're going to be able to, as you mentioned, up to the point of birth or execute a baby after birth. That you do agree that that is illegal in all states.
That's
is not an issue.
Is and should be illegal, except for when you look at the vaguely drafted statutes that are now expanding in these ballot measures. And I think that's the debate we ought to be having in this country, is an honest debate at the state level. And where I give Donald Trump a lot of credit, this was my position during the presidential campaign as well, is that this is an issue for the states in a post-Dobbs world. I think Roe was correctly overturned. I think most Republicans agree on that. This is now an issue for the states. And I know that Democrats want to make this a core issue, but the reality is it's not a presidential issue anymore. It belongs to the states. Kamala Harris has wrongly characterized and wrongfully stated, I think in this case I'd call it an outright lie, saying Donald Trump would sign a federal abortion ban when he's been clear that he's against a federal position on this issue. And I think voters deserve that kind of clarity.
One thing.
Yeah, which is something that Democrats have not been clear about when it comes to the whole, abortion up until birthday, right? When Democrats are asked, hey, what limits do you believe in? Do you believe there should be any limits? They don't answer the question. So Democrats are the ones leaving themselves open to this line of attack, right? Also, on top of that, something that I would do, okay, I would start mentioning if I'm Republicans, like this idea that Democrats are going to codify Roe v. Wade into law, it's founded on nonsense, right? Like it's just not going to happen, okay? First and foremost, they don't have the support to do it. Either way, okay, you can't do a federal abortion ban and you can't codify Roe v. Wade into law. You're not going to have the support in Congress to get something like that done. It's not going to happen. Furthermore, in the unlikely event that it actually does get passed, there's a good chance that with this Supreme Court, it will be shot down, right? It will be deemed unconstitutional, okay? So there's so many roadblocks in the way of Roe v. Wade being codified into law. Like, it's not even a conversation worth having. I don't understand why we're even having this conversation, but I do understand because, again, this is what Democrats do. They prey off of people's ignorance. The mainstream liberal media plays off people's ignorance. We're not having a conversation about whether or not codifying Roe v. Wade into law is actually a constitutional thing. Is this something that could actually happen? Or is it that Democrats are selling their voters a pipe dream, right? Because at this point, we shouldn't even be having this abortion conversation anymore at a national level. It's not a national issue. It's a state's issue, right? If you live in a blue state and you want your abortions, okay, fine, okay? If you live in a red state and you want to ban them all, fine. That's where it's at this point. But I'm sick and tired of this issue being a national issue. It should not be a major issue in national elections. And it is unfortunate that it is, okay? And the only reason that it is at this point is because Democrats and the liberal media are playing off people's ignorance, making people think that Democrats can actually do something about this. They cannot do anything about it. It is done. It is a issue that is over and done with, okay? And what also blows my mind is that these people that claim they believe in democracy so much, hey, they should celebrate something like this, right? If abortion is so popular, which they claim that it is, then you're allowing the people in the states to vote on it. That's democracy, right? And you should accept the outcome of democracy regardless of whether or not you like it or you don't like it. But for whatever reason, Democrats can't do that. No, we can't accept democracy in the states, right? We can't allow the people to choose. Can't do that. Again, it's amazing.
Thing we do also know is that voters, not Democrats, say that abortion is an important issue in this election as well. But as you
okay, so let them vote on it at the state level. Why don't Democrats just say, oh, you know what, we're cool with them voting on it at state level and let it go?
Said it's for the voters now to decide, and much more to learn after the debate coming up next week. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. Thanks for coming on. Sarah?
Yeah. So, good job of Vivek, as per usual, okay, at setting CNN straight. Because, again, they try to create these false equivalencies between Kamala and Trump as a way to defend Kamala Harris. And to intelligent people, it's just, right, it's just desperation. It reeks of desperation. You are trying to defend her by falsely attacking Trump to try to make it seem like, there's some type of equivalency. And it's just not, right? Anybody can see that there's a difference between Trump's position on abortion, which he's never actually really came out in support of the federal ban, right? Saying that, hey, I want to ban all abortion in this country, which is what the Democrats are saying. That he's never actually taken that stance, right? He's always kind of taken a stance of, well, it's a state's issue. Let the states decide. I don't necessarily agree with it, okay? But hey, there's some people that think that there should be limits that are reasonable, okay? Meanwhile, Democrats, they can't even give you a limit. They can't even tell you what they believe on the issue, except that, it should just be available, right, to whoever, whatever, right? And that's not a real position, okay? So, again, good job by Vivek Ramaswamy. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.